All right, let's jump right in. We're going to look at what is, believe it or not, the shortest chapter in the entire Quran. Just 3 verses. But don't let that fool you. Packed inside those few words is a whole universe of meaning, one that totally challenges how we think about success. And that's what we're going to unpack right now, the incredible, powerful message of Surah Al-Kawthar.
So the chapter just drops you right in with this huge statement. Indeed, we have granted you Al-Kawthar. That's it. No warm-up, no explanation. It's presented as this divine gift, this promise, right in the middle of a really specific moment in history, which leaves you wondering, what is Al-Kawthar and, why now? Why was it given at this exact time?
And that's really the core question, isn't it? How can something so short carry so much weight? This really gets to the heart of how the Quran communicates. The secret isn't just in translating the words on the page. It's about understanding the world they were spoken into.
So to really get what's going on here, we have to kind of zoom out. The key to unlocking Al-Kawthar is actually in the chapters that come right before it. They set the entire stage. They describe this crisis that's brewing, and they make the message of Al-Kawthar not just a comfort, but a complete takedown of the values of that time.
Okay, so first things first, we need to talk about the tribe of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the Quraysh. I mean, these guys were the undisputed power in Arabia, and the Quran, in the chapters leading right up to Al-Kawthar, keeps reminding them just how uniquely, incredibly blessed they really were.
And to see that bigger picture, we need to look at a sequence of 3 specific chapters that come right before this one. They really tell a story, with each one adding another layer. First, we have Al-Fil, or the elephant, then the chapter named after the tribe itself, Quraysh, and finally Al-Ma'un, which means small kindnesses. Put them all together, and they perfectly set up what's about to come.
And when we say blessings, we mean immense blessings. They had security like no one else. I mean, God himself had protected their city from a giant army, which made their home this safe sanctuary. And that in turn cemented their leadership, allowed them to become masters of trade, and brought them just enormous wealth. And if that wasn't enough, then came the ultimate spiritual honors, a chapter in the Quran named after them, and the final prophet coming from their very own people.
Yeah, their privilege was just completely off the charts. It was something the Prophet himself pointed out, saying they were favored with things given to literally no one else, before or after. We're talking about this crazy combination of spiritual authority, political power, total security, and massive wealth. They had it all.
So, here's the million-dollar question. With all of this honor, all this divine favor, how did they act? What was the character of this elite, super powerful tribe? Well, the chapter that comes right before Al-Kawthar, Surah Al-Ma'un, it paints a pretty bleak picture.
Instead of being grateful, their response was to reject the very faith that was the source of all their honor. It's wild. Their hearts got so hard that they would literally push orphans away and tell people not to feed the poor. Their worship became this empty show, just whistling and clapping, and they did it on purpose to try and distract the prophet while he was praying. I mean, they had become completely spiritually and morally bankrupt.
And it's into this environment, this world filled with arrogance, materialism, and just pure hostility, that Surah Al-Kawthar is revealed. It's a direct divine response. It's a message of comfort and deep reassurance to the prophet in the face of all of that.
So, what exactly is Al-Kawthar? Well, it's described as the greatest gift from the greatest giver, who is God, to the greatest person to ever receive a gift, the prophet. The word itself means abundance, and not just abundance of one thing, but of everything good. We're talking an abundance of blessings, of honor, of followers, and of a legacy that would never ever fade.
Okay, and this is where things get really interesting, because Surah Al-Kawthar doesn't just offer comfort. It presents this radical, head-on collision of worldviews. It basically draws a line in the sand between how the Quraysh saw the world and the divine way of seeing the world.
Let's just break this down, because it's so important. On one side, you have what success looked like to the Quraysh, hoarding wealth, having a bunch of sons to carry on your name, and getting honor through pride and boasting about it. And then, on the other side, you have the divine way, which just completely flips the script. True power, it's in giving. True legacy, it's your connection to God, and real honor, that's found in humility, prayer, and sacrifice.
Right, so for the Quraysh, power was all about collecting things. The more stuff you had, the more important you were. Simple.
But the Surah commands the Prophet to pray and to sacrifice. The word used is wanhar, and specifically it means to sacrifice the most valuable animal you could, the camel, and use it to feed the poor. So the divine math is completely different. You don't gain power by hoarding, you gain it by giving. You win people over with generosity, not greed.
And then there's legacy. For the Quraysh, legacy was everything. And the only way to measure it was by how many sons you had. If a man didn't have sons, he was seen as having no future, no one to carry his name. But the divine model just shatters that. It shows that the prophet, who didn't have any surviving sons, would have an eternal legacy. His real strength wasn't from his children, it was from his connection to God.
And this leads us right into the final, absolutely devastating verse of the chapter. See, the prophet's enemies, when they saw that his sons had passed away as babies, they started mocking him with this one very specific insult. And what the Quran does is, it takes that insult and turns it right back on them, with incredible power.
The word they used was abtar, and what it means is the one who is cut off, severed from the future. No legacy, no one to remember you. In their materialistic worldview, this was the absolute worst thing you could be. It was the ultimate insult.
But the Quran declares that no, it's his enemy, the one who hates him, who is truly abtar, truly cut off. So let's just fast forward and look at the verdict of history. Who today even remembers the names of the men who taunted him? Their names are gone. Their lineages have vanished. Meanwhile, the prophet's name is honored and recited by millions upon millions of people every single day. His spiritual children fill the globe. His legacy isn't just alive, it shines like the sun.
It's a legacy so powerful that even historians from outside the faith have been struck by its unbelievable endurance. This quote from an Orientalist scholar just captures it perfectly. He says he's amazed by a man like Muhammad who, centuries later, still rules millions of people from his grave. Wow.
And this is the promise of Al-Kawthar, that abundance made real right here in the language of history. Today, something like 1.8 billion people carry on his legacy. That is the divine answer to the taunt of being cut off. It's an eternal connection, a spiritual family that all the wealth and power in the world could never, ever buy.
So the final crucial point this chapter leaves us with is really a question for our own time. In a world that is still obsessed with wealth, with influence, with followers, with family names, this tiny chapter asks us to just stop for a second and think, which set of values really defines a successful life? The one that fades with time or the one that echoes for all of eternity?